What are dark facts in your industry that no one outside knows about? Story 1. Disability services are allocated based on whether you know the exact phrases to use, the exact way to get doctors and therapists to word things, and the exact way to describe your disabled loved one in ways that crack open everything from personal care hours via Medicaid, in-home nursing via Medicaid, developmental disability funding from the state, etc. Parents of disabled kids are the least able to even begin to learn all the ridiculous unwritten rules and will simply be told lies like he doesn't qualify, or that's parental responsibility, or we didn't receive your application doctor's letter etc. You have to essentially project manage your disabled loved one's resources from start to finish, like a top PM to get even the median of what your disabled loved one should get. Single parents are shafted the most. Families with a well-educated mom who dropped out of the workforce because of their kids' needs are the ones who get the most for their kid. Not all of them, but many, because they figure out the system and learn how to appeal all the no answers and push. But it burns them out after a while, and case managers of directors know it. Directors are the worst because they are managing budgets and don't deal directly with agency clients. And if you hold them accountable to law or policy, they'll seek retribution on parents who figure out the system. They'll look for anything of yours in any violation, or to DQ your kid for things based on technicalities, and work to strip your kid of resources. Yes, there are plenty of good people in these systems, but the shoot ones are the people who break parents in a system that's supposed to help them. Answer: can confirm. I'm a mom fighting a school district to get services for my kiddo. I have a job that I'm going to have to quit because managing my kid's disability is a full-time job itself. I joke about knowing the magic words like some kind of goddamn wizard. I've had to become well-versed in education law and disability law to advocate for my child, and that's still not good enough to get what the kid needs. And every time I hear you're such a good advocate, I want to scream because I feel like I'm doing the bare minimum that a parent should do. And people look at me like some kind of superhero. It should not have to be this hard. Story 2. There's lots of turnover at the top of the org chart, and the org chart is getting even more top-heavy. Story 3. No one in a restaurant actually washes their hands until they actually feel dirty, leading to many cases of foodborne illness that could have been prevented. Story 4. Scientists argue like hellcats behind the scenes. We argue so aggressively against misinterpretation. People would find it unprofessional, so we are tame in public. But now people think we don't really care about the truth. Story 5. I noticed a lot of younger nurses have no people skills, zero enthusiasm, and don't even make an attempt to make it seem like they care. Story 6. With every product, we find new ways to invisibly cheapen and shorten the lifespan of what you are buying. Tariffs escalated this to another level, specifically for products going to the United States. Story 7. Government jobs are generally hard to get unless you know someone and you have the credentials. Not just the credentials. I did from outside, but only because I overwhelmed the credentials. Answer: candidates are interviewed by a panel. One panel member is independent from the department. The panel must be made up both men and women. Candidates are scored based on how well they interviewed. The panel compares their notes after all candidates have been interviewed. There is a whole process in place to stop things such as nepotism. The panel member's decision then requires approval from executive to proceed. If you want a government job, you need to prepare and ace the interview, as that will get you the job. Story 8. Employees are trained to emotionally manipulate customers into feeling guilty for returns or complaints. Eliminate them with kindness is often just strategic pressure. Story 9. I work in project management in the SaaS industry. You have no idea just how many applications you indirectly depend on for so many aspects of your life are more or less held together by duct tape and sleep-deprived devs. If there were ever a prolonged disruption of the North American supply chain of Red Bull or Bang, there's a good chance society as we know it would come apart at the seams. Story 10. I left appliance repair long ago, but companies will willingly sell you faulty, shoddy products so we can go and fix them later. Statistically, once you purchase something like a fridge or washer or whatever, you keep it until it runs out. So it's in any company's interest to get you to buy the machine in anyway, knowing it will need to be serviced within a year. A company that we can say looks good found that the sealed system in their fridges were faulty. They made that line of fridges anyway and sold them to the public. They also deal with a parts dealer that rips them off and will even give them refurbished broken parts when their servicemen put in requests for repairs. The company is aware of this and knowingly does business with this parts dealer because it's still cheaper than working with a proper parts dealer. Story 11. All those places that let you self-tour homes, whether to buy or rent, except that offering this convenience will result in countless fraud victims falling for the "this is actually my home to rent you" at an incredible price. How else could I let you in? Now pay me a deposit scam. They have sizable departments devoted to streamlining the process of evicting these victims. It's just a cost of doing business to them. Story 12. Education is no longer about teaching students. It is about documentation, building data, and submitting copious amounts of paperwork to the state, all the while hoping that your students are learning independently in your physical absence. I'm a highly paid secretary that works with kids between 1.5 and 2 hours per day. Unfortunately, I am not an outlier. Story 13. The entirety of the tech world, I'm including all the big tech companies and others of the same caliber, is held by duct tape and prayers. Some of you'd be surprised and shocked seeing some of the code that is the basis of major, everyday products. Story 14. Insurance companies don't want to pay for anything. They are relying on the fact that you will not appeal their decision or put up a fight. They are all a scam. Answer. As an attorney, it's hard to explain to clients that the insurance company will happily spend 3-4 times the amount you're asking for to defeat your claim. On a micro level, it doesn't make sense. On a macro level, it does. They want to make it hard to collect anything to discourage others from even trying. In my experience, State Farm is the best at this. Story 15. Most political pressure is actually to underreport suspected effects of climate change. So what you get is actually a watered-down version. Story 16. Middle schoolers have the same dark thoughts as adults, and they have less emotional intelligence to deal with them. Leads to some seriously bad situations. Story 17. I work in retail, actually in a large retail corporation. Projections are basically just a fancy term for spreadsheets, and very little real analysis is done. Our analysts know how to do it, but our bosses don't ask for it. They just want year-over-year, YoY numbers multiplied by last month's numbers. Automation and productivity is resisted because it's a change. People don't want to take 5 minutes to learn how to do something a new way in order to save literal hours every week. Story 18. A lot of solutions we sell are only temporary fixes. Long-term problems often get ignored until they become someone else's headache. Story 19. I work in a big hotel banquet kitchen. The amount of food we throw away almost daily makes me want to cry. We are easily talking over 200 lobbies a day of beef, chicken, fish, sauces, potatoes, etc. I contemplate quitting just because of that daily. Story 20. We don't know where markets will go. Those who accept this are the one who make money. Not everyone who's in trading makes money. Story 21. Hear me out. Teaching actually isn't as bad as we sometimes make it out to be. Do we face pressure, deadlines, overwork, and would like to be compensated more? Absolutely, but I would argue a majority of jobs do. Are there small pockets of communities that are unbearable to work in and terrible conditions for work? Absolutely, but I can argue that many other industries have similar circumstances. Our in-classroom work days is about 180-190 days, which is about half the year. While our pay is not high, but it is definitely okay in terms of professional standards. Our in-class hours of work are 2 hours less than majority of other 9-5s. Lastly, most of us are not in everyday physical harm working where we do. The truth is that teachers' unions use a lot of money to create media based on teaching shortcomings to be able to get collective political and social power to back our career. This grants them more union participation, which in turn leads to stronger political participation from unions. P.S. Teacher shortage isn't real. That is something urban districts sell to make their lack of support, ability to hire, and ability to keep tenured teacher seem as if the fault lies on external issues and not anything they could control. Story 22. As a teacher, every year we do a student draft. Yes, like in the NFL. The worst teacher gets to pick first, and then we go down the list until all classes are filled. Yes, we do this for all 1,000 students. It's like 30 rounds. Story 23. There are a growing number of young people who come to secondary school without adequate literacy skills and very few who would have anything close to critical thinking skills. Keep in mind that they have access to the 2020s internet and all the propaganda opportunities that presents. Story 24. It's full of unqualified amateurs mounting audio, video, and lighting equipment over the general public's heads. Story 25. One of the darkest open secrets of the education industry in Australia is how badly it rorts international students, especially South Asians. They're sold this shiny dream of study work PR, permanent residency, without anyone being honest about how slim those chances actually are. Migration agents, education consultants, and even people from their own communities charge obscene fees, promise outcomes they know they can't guarantee, and then disappear once the money's paid. On top of that, a lot of dodgy RTOs, registered training organizations, and colleges exist purely to farm visas. Fake attendance, watered-down courses, minimal teaching, and zero real pathway to skilled work, but they'll happily take 15-30 a year. Students are treated like walking ATM cards, not learners. The cruel part is many of these students go into massive debt back home, even to the point of their folks putting their houses up, working cash-in-hand jobs here just to survive, all while thinking PR is just one more course away. Meanwhile, the system keeps them temporary, vulnerable, and exploitable. It's not just a scam by institutions, it's a whole ecosystem that profits from false hope. And when it falls apart, guess who wears the blame? The students, not the industry that set them up to fail. It's a sobering reminder of how much the mental health infrastructure depends on resources that aren't always available when they are needed most. It shows that even with the best intentions from staff, the gap between emergency intervention and long-term recovery remains a significant hurdle that the system is still trying to figure out. Story 26. As a librarian, you'd be horrified how many books we get returned and have to throw out because they're absolutely covered in bedbugs. We put a block on accounts and notify patrons, but am specifically told not to mention this problem to the public whatsoever by management. Story 27. I work in sales at one of the major gold, silver, rare coin dealers on late-night TV. You are better off buying paintings on a cruise ship. Story 28. Most software is insecure, poorly built, and can be destroyed without even being malicious. Like really, every app, every single web page has a long list of bugs to fix and bugs being created every day. As a software developer, it is sad to know that we use a bunch of memory and CPU to over-abstract some very simple workflows just because it's cheaper this way. It's also sad when I see the bugs I fix every day happening in apps I use. Story 29. In therapy land, a large proportion of practitioners can be put into one of two camps. Wounded healers, choosing the career path as initially believing it would help them, or parentified children, when young having a caring responsibility for others beyond what is normal, so they overdevelop their sensitivity and empathy for the other, typically at a cost to being able to respond to their own needs and receive care. So at a formative age, they are either the person needing help or they were the person giving help, or both. The prism in which the world being experienced is caring being cared for. This really puts the investment aspect of luxury goods into perspective for the average consumer. It seems that the real value often lies in the marketing and the initial experience of the purchase, rather than the liquid value of the materials themselves when it comes time to resell them on the secondary market. Story 30. Large format printers that produce banners, signs, and any kind of packaging dispose of an incredible amount of leftover material that goes right into a landfill. Even if there is recyclable waste paper in the mix, any materials that are made with any kind of adhesive can't be recycled. It's far too costly and time-consuming to separate it, so it all goes in the trash along with a good amount of plastic and ink. I'm talking about dozens of semi-truckloads of waste per week from just one location. The amount of pure waste is staggering. Even if they claim to recycle, odds are they don't really. Story 31. All professional screen printers I know pay someone out of the country to generate AI art for their clients, with no exceptions. Story 32. I work in dark store supermarket fulfillment center. If a delivery driver accepts an order and has put one of it outside building into their vehicle and then immediately refuse return it, then the entire order, especially the fruits, eggs, frozen goods, is thrown into dumpster. If you driver choose to return an order, we dislike you. If one of the 12 eggs is severely cracked, then all 12 must be thrown into dumpster. We dislike throwing good foods away, yet lawyers, lousy selfish delivery drivers, laws, etc. government, are causing up to 90 of good fresh foods being thrown away. Of course, then the customer will complain if given moldy, stale, or rotted food. As well they should, thus many still good items that will officially expire within next 12 to 48 hours are automatically thrown away. Yes, the poorly kept secret of Freegan's dumpster divers. Yes, fortunately, we are not forced to pour ink or bleach onto stuff the way some businesses are doing. Thus, the good in the dumpster is still good. When the freegans dumpster divers find it and take it away. I used to be worried of liability, etc., punishment, etc. for them, but am now almost totally, albeit silently, on their side. Am even friends with one of the main freegans dumpster divers. Story 33. Healthcare billing here. Every little thing is a metric we use to maximize profit with no regard to patient care. We have the providers prompted to ask specific questions purely because it allows us to bill your insurance for more charges. The answer doesn't matter. Your treatment won't change, but we get paid more if Xbox gets checked. AI is already replacing all of the back-end jobs also. AI codes our charts, scrubs our claims, answers the phone, etc. I used to manage 125 people. Now it's 25 and expected to drop to under 20 this year. This is while the business grows as well. I could go on, but ever how messed up you think American healthcare is, it's 20x worse. Story 34. Burnout is basically built into the system and treated like a personal failure instead of a structural one. Story 35. MA mechanic and EV worked at a couple different shops where 1-2 other techs would put a little bit of oil on the oil cap, wipe down the oil filter, and put a new reminder sticker on the window and then pull the car out to let the customer pay for a full service when all they got was a new sticker in the window. Story 36. All your retirement planning and financial advice is largely from a few basic software platforms. Your advisor is a salesperson relationship expert. Different if you are H&W, but yeah. Answer. This is why my buddy, a hugely talented investment advisor, left the big name firm where I still work in a different division. He couldn't take not being able to tailor plans and portfolios to clients' actual needs and preferences and was essentially being forced to add inputs to an AI platform that spit out generic output. This firm had zero differentiation from what you could do in 45 minutes yourself after reading Investopedia, and no client beat the baseline. And it's the same at every big advisor, but they sure do like their fees and funneling client money into marketing. Story 37. Music industry. Everything is pay to play. Sure, you get fans from shows and content, but to get into the top 100, publicists, advertising, etc. are all essential, which comes at a high price. Story 38. The amount of stuff in your food. There's a reason the old saying is not wanting to know how the sausage is made. Story 39. That a lot of financial advisors that have done their jobs for north of 10 years, manage hundreds of clients' money, and still are not very proficient at what they're doing, whilst being paid copious amounts of money. Not saying this is everyone, but it scares me regularly. Story 40. Most C-level leaders have no interest in how well the business is going. They just panic about this quarter's numbers until it's time to panic about next quarter's numbers. Story 41. Even though we are in very good standing with government environmental regulators, individual contributions to pollution are dwarfed by industry. And there are manufacturing plants that are way worse than us, especially overseas. Story 42. How poorly most major corporations manage data. So badly they have to hire consultants to sort and present it back to management. It's farcical. Edit. Spelling. Story 43. Every aspect of education, at every level of education, is a money grab. It's all about the Benjamins. Story 44. I work at a feed store for livestock horses. The amount of waste from the hay, even for our small store, is unbelievable. We have a spot on the property that you could park a cargo truck on, just for straw sweepings. Busted 50-lb bag of horse food? Garbage. No one wants it, even for free. So much waste. Story 45. Movie theaters are being bought up by movie studios since the Paramount decree was oxymoronically declared to be antiquated antitrust law. Story 46. There's just so much plastic that gets tossed into the garbage for fixable issues, i.e. missing an insert, but the insert was installed after it was done molding in a press. So why can't we just put the insert in now? Also, robots require so much maintenance. They are picky, and we joke all the time how if it runs all day, the stars must have been perfectly aligned. It bumps out of alignment or the press shifts at all, and it needs to be shut down and reprogrammed. Story 47. 90 of administrative processes in any type of social service or welfare assistance in the U.S., from fed to state to local municipality, are put in place to frustrate applicants to give up before they ever see assistance provided. A large number of those positions are held by people who think it's their job to stop as many as possible from receiving assistance. Many have no personal interest in providing help to the needy. Answer. All the means testing is a huge waste of time and energy. We should have far fewer programs, make it easier to get the benefits people are entitled to, and not have any income eligibility cliffs that keep people trapped on the benefits, because a better paying job would ultimately put them in worse shape. It would cost less, the number of government employees would be fewer, and more people would get the help they deserve. Story 48. Wedding photographers charge you for them to take the photos? That's it. You pay for their time. If you actually want to own or even sometimes see the digital photos, you pay more for that after the wedding. When I first got into the business, I couldn't believe how shady that was. But it's almost across the board in the industry. I'm one of the last photographers whose upfront price includes labor and, the actual product. Story 49. My issue wasn't with your ability to file a claim, but why one would have so many. It sounds like you're in the industry, and I misunderstood thinking you're just a lawsuit-happy individual. My apologies. Story 50. It would make you sick to your stomach to see the amount of food that gets thrown in the trash in public schools. If you're sending your kids to school with food, you'd be surprised to know it goes straight into the garbage like money just being thrown away. Answer: at the school I teach at, we have to send into the office a count of hot lunches that day in my class, along with the daily attendance. That way, only the food the kids who are getting hot lunch actually gets made. This eliminates a lot of the waste and saves money. Food is better quality too. Generally, remarkably easy and basic fix for the problem. I hope it catches on. Story 51. Staff at schools don't like custodians no matter how hard we work. We're the same, good and bad, but we're just bad in everyone's eyes. Story 52. Mass-produced food is usually pretty shoot quality, and you'd probably not want to eat plenty of it if you saw its production. I had a few jobs working in the QC department for a few places, and I only thought significantly less of whatever was being made there after seeing its production. Their only goal was putting out as much product in a shift as possible, as long as the products were barely passable from a distance. Story 53. Burnout is normalized. Long hours, constant learning pressure, and fear of falling behind are quietly common. Story 54. Data breaches don't surprise me at all. There are so many users that can access sensitive info, as role delegation gets ignored if it's not implemented early on. So everyone gets high-level access. Answer: I worked at a used car dealership years ago, and everyone had a log into the vehicle inventory system, even the porters, which are basically car transporters. In the inventory system, we had access to sales and financing applications. So even the lowest of the totem pole entry-level position could look up anyone who had ever filled out an app and see their name, address, previous address, SSN, place of employment and salary, etc. I'm honestly shocked we didn't have any claims of identity theft. Story 55. Oil and gas. The average closed tank can never be completely sealed for your protection. The tanks have to breathe, otherwise they can collapse or explode. Unfortunately, these tanks can release around 200 elephants of weight and pollution a year or more. True story. Story 56. I'm in tech. Substances dealers and the tech industry are the only sellers that call their customers users. Story 57. Restaurants are extremely unsanitary, and cross-contamination is extremely common, even in the cleanest of restaurants. I've worked as a cook for 10 years, and I have seen the best and the worst of the industry, and even the best is still bad. That's just the reality of the industry. Also, I am currently working as an elementary school cafeteria cook, and more than 50 of all of our food is partied too hard. Kids throw out so much food it's insane. They only eat what they like, and our bosses expect us to provide a complete meal, most of which the kids won't eat. 50 partied too hard, honestly, feels like an understatement. So when your kid tells you they aren't eating lunch, it's not because they aren't getting enough food, it's because they just refuse to eat it. Story 58. Hospitals aren't reimbursed by insurance or have to fight extra hard with tons of documentation to be if a patient either falls while admitted or develops a bed sore. Because of that, the staff is often spending more time repositioning people and assisting relatively stable patients to the bathroom than they are with their more critically patients. This isn't helped by management who are incredibly focused on patient satisfaction scores, because anything less than 100 on a patient survey counts as a fail and negatively affects hospital funding as well. This anything less than perfect is zero survey phenomenon exists in many injuries. Story 59. Surgeons watch videos on how to do the surgery outside the door while you're being put to sleep. Orthosurgeons. Story 60. Big publishing house wants to push a book. The day the book gets out, Publishing house buys it in bulk. Like the publishing house buys hundreds and hundreds of copies of its own book. Book gets sold 10 at 0 copies on the first week. Book gets featured on NY Times. Libraries start to push it. Book gets the little auto label bestseller. People get curious because it sold so many copies and everyone talks about it. Book becomes a bestseller. Story 61. Lots of investment advisors and broker-dealers who get barred by regulators for committing fraud, appeal their bar, and end up back in the industry because they're not capable of working in any other business. Story 62. App developers usually care about building safe, secure software. Those paying their salary usually don't. Story 63. I work in costumes for film and TV. The number of actors, mostly women, but also some men, who I hear in fittings saying things like, I feel a lot happier and healthier as a size 6. But if I'm not a size 2, nobody will hire me as chilling. I've worked jobs where I have to set aside 15 minutes every time an actor has a new change because I have to go to their trailer and give them a pep talk. Because even though they like the clothes and fittings, the prospect of wearing them on camera for the first time freaks them out. No, of course you don't look fat in those pants. No, that sweater doesn't accentuate your belly. That's nonsense. You don't even have a belly. Of course you look good in that dress. You're gorgeous. It's sad to see how being so relentlessly observed can mess with a person's self-image. It is getting a little better, but not quickly, and certainly not enough. Story 64. American healthcare is all around dangerous and unstaffed. If you know someone who is in healthcare, you should have them double-check your labs and scans just to be sure. The business side does not care about you. The bottom line is money, and they do not give a feck. Their incompetence and poor leadership has burnt out even the best and most caring providers. The system is incredibly flawed. I stepped down from the management job I worked hard to get when the administrator said, I have to go talk so-and-so out of cancer treatment. It's just going to cost the building too much. Feels like morally healthcare and money don't align to me. Story 65. I'm a data analyst. I never trust marketed statistics. In my experience, every stat ever printed and plastered on a website or billboard is just marketing bullshit. Every single boss I've ever had has gotten me to fudge with the numbers to confirm their own bias. Answer. My old employer went out of their way to have me overcomplicate things in order to obfuscate information when it was presented to the business owner because he didn't have the nous to interpret it anyway, so it was easier to just go, everything is fine, than tell him the truth. Their other tactic was to carpet bomb him with so much data that he didn't know where to begin. That's pretty much the only use Power BI ever served for them, not to make dashboards, but to be a big database that he couldn't handle. Story 66. Administration has broken our spirits so much that we honestly don't care if your poorly behaved child knows how to read. We are powerless if your child starts acting up, so we just want them out of our classroom. Answer. I am so glad I do the absolute most for my son's teacher. He's ASD, but well-behaved. Now, that first year, not so much. I learned that she took a class for him his first YR summer, public school Montessori, 360 classroom. I deadass know she sends him out sometimes, and that's okay. She has 30 kids in the morning and luckily only 12 in the afternoon, kinder. My son is 5. With both our work, he can read. I couldn't have done that alone. Thank you for doing what you can. Parents who give a fudge will do the same. Story 67. The number of people who actually die in a day for reasons other than natural causes, takedown, tragic end, severe car crash, freak accident, etc. I could see a dead body nearly every day if I wanted. Story 68. The amount of waste in a lot of manufacturing is absolutely insane, all while the companies outwardly give off an image of caring for the environment. To bring up one example, in the bathrooms where customers' visitors can go, there's no plastic bags in the trash cans to reduce plastic waste. But in the actual factory, we would fill up a full garbage bag, the big black ones, of mixed plastic and other waste on every station, every day. None of this is recycled. So where does all this trash come from? In one part of the assembly, we'd, for example, install rubber gaskets. It came as a large dinner plate-sized disc, but we'd only use the very outer part, less than a pinky finger in width. The remaining 8,090 goes straight into the trash. This is done 20 times a day or more, and that's just one step of a single station. Story 69. I've read the fine print in insurance contracts, property and causally, medical, dental, life insurance, etc., as part of my job early in my career. In all the contracts, it states that any act of terrorism or participation, the claim is not covered in the United States. Given the current climate, depending on how it goes, a lot of people will be left with totaled cars and crazy medical bills from icy, harmful behavior. And it's likely not going to be covered because we know how insurances will look at this small detail, but is going to fudge over a lot of people in already tight facial situations. To be clear, insurance is diabolical already, and these loopholes are designed to keep them rich, and these rest of us poor. I was making 17 an hour as an analyst. No longer in that field. Story 70. Lost and found is basically finders keepers. Most stuff isn't declared and usually ends up with the higher-ups. Story 71. A huge chunk of our work is just patching mistakes or preventing disasters, not actually creating value. Story 72. The people that package takeout containers before they go to restaurants? Yeah, like 90 of them don't wash their hands after using the bathroom. There's so much more I could write, but this is probably the biggest one. Story 73. Dog grooming. There is no government oversight. Anybody can claim they are a dog groomer. No tests, no hours, no licensing, nothing. For some, this is probably great, but being in the industry for 5 years, I saw some terrible practices, even reported a few. Nothing happened. Dirty water, dirty kennels, using Dawn dish soap as shampoo, not checking for vaccines. Services being charged and not being done. Dogs were tied to the table so the groomer could have a smoke break. Mold outbreaks from not properly cleaning at the end of the day. I worked at a couple different shops and saw the same things. Even tried to work for a dog grooming school and was unimpressed at how things were taught. All about numbers, get them in and out as fast as possible. If you're not good at adding add-ons, special shampoo ECT, you got low priority in scheduling. This school would even hide the fact that students would be working on the dogs. If you find a one-on-one groomer, an in-home groomer, or a decent mobile groomer, this is the way to go. Avoid big box stores and people that have been grooming for 20 plus years. If your groomer is sending you pictures and videos during the groom, this is a good sign. Or find a place with live streaming cameras. We often view history as something static and untouchable once it's behind glass. But in reality, it's maintained by people who can have accidents just like anyone else. It adds a very human, if slightly stressful, layer to the pristine atmosphere of a museum when you realize how much invisible repair work is actually going on. Story 74. Wouldn't call this dark per se, but definitely something people should be aware of. Software engineers don't have the same rigors as engineers in other fields. Basically, in other engineering professions, you have to take special courses and get certifications. For software, that's not a thing. No degree is technically required, nor any formal education. Any random dude can get a role calling themselves a software engineer if they can pass the interviews and manage to get hired. Whether they don't immediately get caught out and fired is another thing, but it also means there are no true standards, besides IEE, that are beheld to, not with building, maintaining, or testing software products. Thankfully, the tools for software creation and testing are pretty robust, and developers teams that give a darn can build some really great stuff even if they don't have formal training. Low barrier to entry, but a long learning curve that rises exponentially, plateaus, and continues on in that manner. Source: I'm a longtime computer programmer, way BS and computer science degree. All this not to shoot on people who don't have a formal education. Some of the smartest programmers I know didn't. LLMs and their slop-coded hallucinations are honestly something I'd be more worried about. Their output is making its way into operating systems like Windows 11, and in a forced way. Story 75. Canada is a state-run economy, definitionally authoritarian in an academic sense. It's faux pas in political science to say it, though. Story 76. I work in heavy highway construction. If you ask for a specific mix that is some obscene spec that we don't normally run, you are going to pay a 2050 premium. If you ask for a state-approved mix, then balk at the price, then ask for something cheaper. You're getting yard scrapings and end-of-silo mix. As a producer, we can give you bottom-of-the-barrel mix I would use to fill potholes or overcharge you where I can get a new scale. Be a better customer? Listen to our staff. You'll get a job appropriate mix. Story 77. Most people are fundamentally incapable of understanding the difference between good data and bad data, and almost all companies take advantage of that. Story 78. The lump sum value of your pension plan can vary widely dependent upon the interest rate environment when you retire. A 65-year-old who had a $50K a year pension who took it as a lump sum received. About 785 in 2021, about 625 in 2022. Same pension, same company, same years of service, same compensation. Only thing that changed were the IRC 417 rates in effect when they retired. Story 79. Almost everyone is a hack, and they are going around ruining people's homes and charging exorbitant amounts of money to do so. Story 80. I work in mobile games. Games are made to feed people ads and optimized to do so. The art was lost over a decade ago. No more Angry Birds. Just merge clones and match 3 games with casino mechanics. Also, AI has replaced 90 of developers in this space. Not fun. Story 81. In Australia, the people traveling on the interstate trains are primarily 70 years old. This means people often die on the train. If you ask a staff member if they have ever had anyone die and they say no, they're either lying or new. Story 82. I'm an adult worker. 80 of my clients are married, have a successful career, children they love, and overall seem like the type that would never betray their partner. I will never be able to trust a man again after doing this job. Story 83. Lots and lots of pastors don't believe the line they feed their congregation. Source. Me, a former pastor who heard from hundreds of colleagues. Answer. I worked in the church and knew lots of priests when I was still practicing. They were all good guys, thankfully. Never met a creep. But the older they got, the more I realized they weren't believers. They had been doing it so long, they couldn't do anything else. What they were really doing was angling for a comfortable retirement, and many of them got it. Though they often got dragged back into administration or saying masses because eventually all the scandals and falling membership numbers meant fewer new priests. I miss believing like I used to. I miss the community. But seeing that the leaders of the faith were almost all failing at the end made me realize just how human and not divine those faith organizations really were. Story 84. Surgeons trained in some countries are not up with our infection control standards. But I wanted to keep my job and not be labeled as someone that's anti-immigration. Story 85. I can only talk about Australia, but in the construction industry, a huge percentage of workers drink and/or use substances site or are under the influence if they don't use when on site. Reports are around 6 use ice regularly, but that is likely extremely low as it's a self-report system, and many tradies cover up for guys in their work gangs because it's really hard finding good workers or sober ones. And man, does it create issues. Workers who are all over the fudge place, dangerous work sites, workers yelling at each other or throwing punches. Man, it's shoot. Story 86. Progression is nowhere near based on performance. It is not about what you know. It is only about who you know, teacher. Story 87. It's totally legal for airlines to dispatch aircraft with broken or missing parts and have customers pay to be on that flight. Story 88. Its support here compared to some of the other responses I've read here, my answer is a 310 and terrifying. The idea that the human race is highly intelligent, brilliant, and deserves to be on top of the world is insane to me. I've done IT support for people who I'm genuinely shocked that didn't get eliminate crossing the road because they truly, truly don't understand colors and shapes. It's maddening, and I have lost my will to live so many times over the last 19 years. The only way I could get my interest in the human race back was to look up at tall towers and buildings and realize the same insane moronic humans are also the same who are able to build a 6,100 floor building that can house so many people. There's also a lot of good people who know a lot but don't understand a T and are able to respect the fact that they don't know anything. Self-awareness is all I ask. Again, my answer is a 310 compared to some of these other replies. Story 89. Not my industry anymore. The local HVAC tech in Georgia doesn't recover the refrigerant out of the system. Story 90. A lot of other realtors will cold call asking if they want to sell their home because they have a buyer. They don't. Just a tactic to get in the door. They rationalize it by saying buyers are looking, and I may know one. I did it early on and it felt deceptive because it is deceptive. Story 91. People would be surprised at the amount of Walmart returns. At least 30 18-wheeler van loads per day at the location I did some work for in South Carolina. This was about 15 years ago, so that number has probably increased. Story 92. In construction, there are contractors and developers that will do anything not to comply with ADA requirements, BC. I worked for a company that would uninstall ADA-required equipment after inspections. Story 93. That the illegal surplus created by the open border nightmare, created by Kamala Harris, has made it so people can not afford to live. because now they do not have to pay people a livable wage. Story 94. Union shops are fudge horrendous to work with. They slow manufacturing and increase prices to customers. If you even just misspell something on a print, they'll come sit outside your office until you fix it and not get anything done. Working with a non-union shop is so much better because they'll actually just get shoot done. Story 95. Artificial intelligence is a solution looking for a problem. A lot of times, billions have been spent of data centers that it's being shoved down everywhere to force a market. Story 96. Gunsmith here. Here's a few realities about the industry and the gun world as a whole. The reality about guns is that commercial guns are largely a byproduct of military-industrial buildup. We're seeing that with the influx of affordable Turkish guns, eerie. Tice's 1,911 Turkey used to be a buyer of weapons for their military, with decommissioned weapons being given to allies or the open market. What we are seeing now is Turkey becoming a producer. The rumor is that Turkey is readying for an attack by Israel, either directly upon Turkish troops within a potential alliance with Syria, or via U.S.-Israeli proxy groups. Most cowboy guns, single-action six-shooters, are produced in a tiny complex of towns in Lombardy, Italy. They're all Beretta products under different names. Even Colt uses Beretta parts fits for their SAAs. Only the Colt frame is known to be produced in the U.S. It's all Beretta. The only major difference between an Ubertai Cattleman and a Colt SAA is 1,500. Most people don't clean their guns. If you're not doing it every time you shoot, you're asking for failures. Any gun organization with a decentralized structure or otherwise a lack of a top-down national command structure is a scam. I was in the SRA for a year and can tell you it's a total sham. Is you need to tell is a gunsmith is worth your time. Look at their shop. If you see a milling machine or a lathe, you're seeing a real gunsmith, as gunsmiths are machinists at their core. If you see not machines, or worse yet, you're seeing branded merch, you're looking at a part-swapping armorer. Most gun deaths, like 66, are suicides. Most of the remainder are via gang violence. If you really want to reduce gun deaths, you have to champion state-based healthcare, such as mass health. If you want to reduce gun crime, you have to address the material conditions of the working class with rent control and wage increased. Gangs are businesses. Give their gang recruitment pool economic alternatives to income by deprivation, and you fix gun crime. The most egregious subculture of the gun world is the world of muzzleloaders. Loads of convicted felons and mentally unbalanced people get into muzzleloading. They are the I studied the blade of the gun world. And the worst are not Confederates. Confederate guys, even those with flags on their cars, as a whole are history nerds and Southerners. The worst are fur trapper people and high-tech muzzleloader users. The closer they are to a dead fur-bearing animal, the worse their mental state. Most cops know nothing about guns or can even shoot very well. The situation in Uvalde, where cops took photos with the guns like movie props, is a nationwide reality. In old times, there were drop guns. It's not a gun a criminal drops to dispose of evidence. It's gun a cop drops to cover a eliminate. Normally, it's the cheapest gun the department had, or something taken out of the evidence locker, with the serial number Dremelid ground off. They dip them in acetone, then oil them, and keep them in a Ziploc bag in the trunk of the car. Lots of takedown get covered with drop guns. It's a bit unsettling to think about what might be lurking behind the drywall of a seemingly perfect brand new home. This highlights the constant tension in the trade industries between meeting tight deadlines and maintaining the high standards of craftsmanship that homeowners assume they are paying for. Story 97. Working in the cannabis industry, it seems pretty common for the entire company to be an absolute shit show. There was so much waste at the facility I worked at. Worst was probably my most disliked trend, disposable vapes. They need to use lithium batteries to have enough power to get up to temp, and I don't think anyone in the entire company really knew or cared how to store them properly. Story 98. Do you remember how, when the U.S. captured Maduro, the lights went out due to certain capabilities that we have? The reality is that, on the global stage, everyone has gotten into at least some portions of everyone else's power, water, fuel infrastructure, and they sit on that capability indefinitely. You might imagine that once someone pounds a power plant or pumping station, they'll deploy ransomware immediately or rickroll someone. In reality, nation-state actors, including every country you, dear reader, don't like, just sit and wait until the time is right. The control systems are highly specialized, and at some one point, they just can't be patched. Story 99. Teachers 100 have favorites, and kids we can't wait to have out of our rooms at the end of the school year. Story 100. In the food service industry, the 5-second rule is actually the we didn't see it, so it didn't happen rule. Story 101. The price it creates in veterinary medicine, they keep telling you are to keep up with costs are really to pad the pockets of their private equity backers. Your vet techs aren't getting raises. Doctors' pay does go up because they work on commission, and the quality of medicine isn't going up in any substantial way to justify how much more it's costing you. Story 102. Probably not all that dark, but credit card companies do not dislike you for using your card, paying in full, and collecting the rewards. Quite the opposite, in fact. They aren't even hoping you screw up and miss a payment to hit you with interest and fees even. Story 103. The vehicle history report is often incomplete or inaccurate, especially if the owner did their own maintenance. The service center manager was lazy, or the owner paid out of pocket for collision repairs. You can find a car that was meticulously maintained by a loving owner and never wrecked, and another that was never maintained, run into the ground, and crashed into a pole on the way home from the bar, then patched together in a buddy or relative's garage. But they will look identical to the untrained eye and squeaky clean on the report. A professional inspection is your only protection. Story 104. Nowadays, practically every professional writer, including the giants of the industry, leans on AI. Publishers are mostly aware of this, and they don't give a shoot. In fact, they themselves rely on AI to edit 99.9% of all manuscripts before going to print. Story 105. The only way is there more in the back ever works in retail is if the store is completely mismanaged and managers are more focused on busy work than clearing the warehouse, making sure shelves are full. Story 106. As you could look at my page and tell, I'm a content seller. Not to beat a dark or ruin a secret, black men have paid me to call them the N-word and degrade them. Liberals have paid me to make fun of them for being one. Don't tell anyone, though. Story 107. Some clients or customers aren't wrong, but the systems were forced to work and actively make their lives harder. Story 108. It's not my industry, but I was married to a very successful musician in a triple platinum selling band back in the late 90s to early 2000s. What I learned about that industry was deeply disturbing. The way the suits control the creative process, especially once a band has had a big hit, the more promise that band shows, the more the noose tightens regard to creative control. They literally fly their people to loom around the studio while a band is trying to really get into their creative process together, and they totally put a vice grip on that process. It's really hard to stomach. It's also why so many bands have one or two fantastic records, make a bunch of money, and then shoot starts to fall apart. Artists at that level are absolutely owned by major labels, and those labels, the big ones, often do much more harm than good. Who can do their best work while some dude in a suit is standing in on your studio session and telling you what you can and can't write? I know this isn't the case with all labels, but in the case of this band and that label, it was really sad. 2 of the original 3 band members ended up leaving and shoot fell apart. Answer: Martin Scorsese managed to make a couple of films that made mafiosi sympathetic. He is good at what he does. He tried to make a TV series about an AR guy. There is just no way to pull off a sympathetic AR guy if you give even a tiny fudge about the music. The creep main character discovering the New York Dolls was like watching a conquistador discovering a native village. The result was similar. By the end of the first episode, I was hoping the main character was going to die slowly in a fire. Story 109. Cannabis. There is no ethical cannabis company in terms of company values relating to customer values. It is a green rush for business owners. They think it's a way to exploit a new industry to get rich quick. Every single one I've met. Also, after over 10 years in many states, I've never seen a truly minority-owned cannabis business. Most minority-owned use a POC as a front person for the license. Or a POC gets a license and sells it immediately. Saw this with a Pakistani guy who didn't know a thing about pot, but got a license as a social equity candidate and sold it once he could to white people. Social equity is a lie, and the idea that we can achieve it doing things based on or around skin tone is a joke. I mean, think about it. Our ancestry is complex, and the one-drop rule is dated and racist. Are we going to really debate who is black and who isn't? And since they can't give out licenses based on skin color, it turns into things like if you did time for breaking the law or if you lived in a specific zip code for X amount of time. Well, I'm sorry I didn't caught when I sold plant substance like some other idiot did, People openly acknowledge rich white men have all the money. But when it's time to open a multi-million-dollar cannabis company that cannot qualify for any loans from the bank, you have to give the license to someone who can actually afford to do what they say they will do in their application. Well, if you're telling me rich white men have hoarded all the resources, and it takes significant resources, liquid, just to open the doors, then the licenses will default to those folk with the money to pull it off. I really think this is why the Fed is slow to reschedule or legalize. In its current state, it's all so up, and the money moving around is big. Another thing, legal cannabis corrupts local government. It's not a ton of money at the federal level at all, but for small local governments, it's big money. Here's an article that is a little dated but still a good read. Oh, and your flower is often remediated, which means it had to be restated because it failed for something like mold or mildew. Also, nobody cures the product correctly because it takes too long. An indica sativa hybrid is a lie. I mean, think about it. Every strain is a cross of strains in a long line of family genetics. But you want to tell me it's a pure sativa or pure indica? Get out of here. They're all hybrid, and that's what you want. Hybrid is a cannabis plant bred to get the best of both worlds in different ratios and flavors. True sativas take 9 months to flower instead of 6, and they often produce less weight and are a finicky plant. Plus, good luck finding one. Anyone in business with a brain is not going to wait 3 extra months, 50 longer, just to be able to sell their product. Also, no, that girl at the register does not want your number and definitely doesn't want to give you theirs. It's their job to be cool and nice and get you to buy plant substance. Calm down and get Tinder. It's incredible how much psychological research goes into making us perceive a product as natural or healthy without the manufacturers ever having to change the actual ingredients. It shows that in the modern food industry, the design of the packaging often tells a much louder and more convincing story than the nutritional label itself. Story 110. The technologies that are sold B2B are often held together with patches, and some promise functionality may not even exist yet. Salespeople will do anything to get the sale and let the company deal with it later. Story 111. Despite all the billboards and commercials claiming we care about you, administrators and managers in healthcare are mostly in it for money. Hospitals are horribly understaffed, and caregivers put in dangerous situations while perpetually undervalued. Doesn't matter that direct caregivers like myself, nurses, doctors, respiratory therapists, etc., don't have the equipment or staff we need. It all gets swept under the rug for image and narratives that aren't accurate. Have filed hundreds of patient safety event reports. Nothing ever comes from them. Just perpetually battered with toxic positivity of work harder. We're a team, you're a healthcare hero without actually giving us the staff, resources, or supplies we need. We're horrendously underpaid and understaffed, and nothing will ever change. Source: Pharmacy Tech with 15 years shift supervisor experience at one of the top 10 largest hospitals and networks in the country. Story 112. If anyone bothered to investigate limousine party bus companies, the industry would cease to exist. Because I don't know a single company that stayed in business and wasn't doing something shady if not illegal. You couldn't pay me to get on an old modified school bus or any of those modded vehicles someone did in their garage. Story 113. We have no idea how AI really works. It's a side effect of a side effect, and because it does cool stuff, we let it slide. To be clear, we know how machine learning works for the most part. We know what large language models are doing mostly. But the emergent stuff we see in AI is largely beyond our understanding. Story 114. I worked in investment banking for a little over 4 years. This isn't industry specific, but something people outside corporate don't realize. Year-end reviews are not anonymous or safe. Whatever you write about your manager or leadership can be read word for word by higher-ups. I wrote a very honest review of my manager, and I was fired about a month later. He was genuinely horrible, so I don't regret it, but if you want to keep your job, don't treat reviews like a place for honesty. Sugarcoat everything. Story 115. It would make you sick to your stomach. See the amount of food that gets thrown in the trash in hotels, especially which are serving all-you-can-eat buffet meals. Story 116. Telecom and communications networks are a convoluted patchwork of all kinds of companies and businesses doing all kinds of things in more layers than can be counted. Nobody actually has an overview of everything that's going on. Many times we just do stuff and hope that it works. Story 117. That all of our research is actually started by channeling evil spirits. Also that unaliving the masses is a higher priority than even profit. This is deliberate. Story 118. I'm a server. No matter how much we insist it's okay that you are keeping the entire restaurant open after we've closed, please know we are 100 lying. We will get fired if we deviate from anything other than pure delight that you are keeping us from going home. We dread it. Please don't believe us. Story 119. Managed boarding and grooming kennels for 8 years. The secret is that the employees actually do love your pets too. Even the difficult ones, most of us realize they just miss their people. The number of times I've wept when a pet died, or spent way too many hours comforting a dog with separation anxiety, or spent hours off the clock with a boarder who needed to be rushed to a vet office, wouldn't trade it for the world. Some pets just suck though, not gonna lie. Answer: my dog child, R.A.P., who was the love of our lives, turned into a raging beast for nail trims. I had to put her on the floor and leave the room. Nobody could remove her from my arms, or she'd maul them. Yeah, 12 orbs of fury. If she couldn't see me anymore, she became stoic, and you could cut her leg off, and she wouldn't flinch. I left her with the Petco grooming booth and walked away. I came back to peer around the corner covertly so she wasn't able to see me, and I see the young lady, she couldn't have been 19, holding her in her arms close to her chest like a baby, cuddling her and kissing her repeatedly on top of her little head, and talking to her while another woman trimmed her nails. I felt like the Grinch with the growing heart. It was so sweet to see someone being so loving to my baby girl, despite her being a tough case, even with nobody watching. That is someone who truly loves animals. Story 120. I used to work in jewelry. Most of the prettiest gemstones are also very affordable. Tanzanite is a beautiful purple and looks nicer than amethyst. Topaz comes in lots of colors, including a pretty blue color, which can be as nice as aquamarine. Opals aren't as brightly rainbow-hued as they look in pictures. Story 121. Almost every hairstylist gets the heebie-jeebies when we shampoo your hair and you just stare up at us. Close your darn eyes at the shampoo bowl. Story 122. Used to screen resumes for small companies. Job requirements are more of a wish list situation. Never let some unchecked boxes deter you from applying. You have no idea what the applicant pool is like. The biggest boon, especially at small companies, is someone who legitimately cares. Answer: my company once put out a job vacancy for a position that would assist me in my job. Looking purely at the job requirements, I did not feel that I was appropriate to assist myself in a job I've been doing for 2 years. If you're looking for work and a job seems even remotely like you could do it, apply anyway. It's not like you have anything to lose. Story 123. There is way more butter than you think in almost every dish you eat at fancy restaurants, and that is usually the reason you won't see the amount of calories in each dish. Source: 5 years as a chef in Italian cuisine, head chef, 8 years in an Italian kitchen. Edit: since it has been asked, if I could recommend one guidebook for you all to have in your kitchen, it would be Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, Mastering the Elements of Good Cooking by Salman Nosrat. Yes, there are a plethora of others, but this one is my personal favorite. Story 124. Former Bath & Body Works associate here. The scents they discontinue will come back with a different name and new marketing. They're just recycling the scents. Answer: I worked for the biggest Mast, the company that owns Bath & Body Works and is a division of L Brand, contractor in Virginia for 8 years. There are so many fragrances that are rebranded and recolored to a different flavor. Fragrance oil is absolutely 100 the most expensive part of any shower gel or foaming soaps we made. Odds are they have hundreds of thousands of pounds of these oils in warehouses all over the U.S., so they just rebrand it as something else. It's not like they are going to scrap it. Also, all this shoot you see on the labels of shower gels and foaming soaps that say enriched with vitamin E or contains aloe vera extract is complete absolute fudge bullshit. We made our batches in sizes of 40 zeros. In a Fortic LB batch, you had about 2 ounces of vitamin E you would add to the batch, and barely enough aloe extracts to even get it out of the fudge cup to add it to the batch. They add the absolute bare minimum to have it on the label, as required by FDA. Foaming soaps are also about 65 water, so they make an absolute eliminate selling them. Story 125. Some therapist counselors are on the wrong side of the couch, so to speak. If you feel your mental health provider is unhinged, they may very well be. Answer: a family member tried to break up with his long-term GF who was a therapist. I was shocked at her absolutely unhinged behavior, which included, but was not limited to, her taking his childhood teddy bear, chopping it up with garden shears, piling it up on his bed with the note, "This is what you are doing to my heart," stabbed into it with a steak knife. Story 126. Change your dirty furnace filters and clean your AC coils outside. These make up an easy 30 of my calls for no heat cooling. Edit: more attention than I thought. So real quick, you have two coils, inside and outside. Your furnace filter keeps the inside one clean, so make sure that filter is clean. Outside coil, eliminate power to the unit. Remove the coil guard and top, usually 516 or 14 nut driver, and like 20 screws. Don't use high-pressure water simply on a shower setting and hold it a few inches away from the coil. Do from both ways. Button that beauty up and wait for it to dry before turning power back on. Your head pressures are going to love you. Edit 2. Oh, don't forget to blow your condensate line more than your husband. Prevents water flowing back into the unit from a block. Story 127. At Goodwill, 50 of what you donate ends up in the trash, BC. We don't have the space for it, or we just deem it too ugly. Story 128. All I'm saying is there is a reason no one who works in the RV industry owns an RV. Edit, just some clarification. I work in Elkhart, Indiana, which is the RV capital of the world, as other people have quality as shoot on all the major companies. The big ones being Thor, Forest River, and Grand Design. These three companies own probably 90 of all RV companies, so check who owns what you are buying. There are some mom and pop shops that do put out good products, but those are pretty few and far between. Story 129. As a software engineer, double your delivery date for a product in anticipation of an overeager project manager trying to get promoted. Story 130. Former aircraft fueler, don't check your pets in kennels, especially in summer or winter. They are submitted to some very harsh environments, left on belt loaders in the sweltering heat right next to a running APU that's loud enough to deafen human ears, let alone a dog's. It's terrible. I always feel so sorry for them. American Airlines will destroy your luggage. They get overloaded on carts, fall off on the way to the plane, and are left there to get run over by tankers and, yes, fuelers, and rained on, then dragged to the edge of the ramp to sit all night while you arrive at your destination and wonder where the hell your bags are. If your departure is delayed, 90 of the time it's us, the fueler. Look out the window to the right side if it's a small plane, left side if it's a really big plane. If there's a truck sitting under the wing, we're the reason you're late. Sorry. Edit. Look, guys, I don't know what it's like for the pets on the flight. I've only seen them countless times left in kennels on belt loaders in the hot sun next to an engine. I was a fueler at DFW International for 6 years. I don't have insider knowledge of the airlines beyond my station. I would advise against checking pets if you can help it, but I don't have any advice beyond that. There are some people in these comments that worked for the airlines and have better knowledge. Twand edit. Just want to let you guys know, the pets in kennels are not always left outside. It's not an everyday occurrence, and it's not just AAL that does it. I just fueled more AAL than anything else. But I've seen it happen more than enough times. Story 131. You'd be surprised how willingly someone will do their job and even go above and beyond if you just compliment them for their professionalism, politeness, and how they are helping them. Edit. Thank you all. Story 132. Worked at a department store photography studio owned by a major photography company that you can imagine probably took your school yearbook photos. The company also is partnered with a popular online photo order website. Notice how quickly we write down a price, strike it out, and write a new price as the deal? Yeah, that's pretty much just the price that everyone gets. We aren't doing the math that fast. We have it memorized because almost everyone that comes in has that 40 off coupon. Don't come in without a coupon. There is always a coupon on the website. If you end up paying for sitting fees, it's because you just didn't go on our website. Honestly, don't buy our photos. If you just do the session and say that you'll buy them online later on said partnered photo order site, it'll be cheaper than if you buy them in store that day. Yes, even when we say, oh, but you won't get this deal online. If you do buy in studio that day, just buy the digital CD of your photos. You get to keep all of them instead of having to pick your favorite 3-4 pictures. Oh, and again, it is way cheaper to take that CD to a photo kiosk and have them printed yourself. Please don't spend $400 on a couple photos that you can't legally copy when you could have gotten an 80 seat of all the photos and have the copyright to them. Story 133. Not an industry I work in per se, but I used to be in a sales role. One of my customers was a milk bottling plant. I was somewhat surprised that they were putting the exact same milk in both organic and non-organic cartons. Turns out all of their milk is organic, but in order to not miss out on the sales of non-organic milk, they just bottle them differently and sell them at different prices. Story 134. Construction boy here. If your windows or sliding doors are tough to open and close, 9 times out of 10, we put your own dish soap on tracks and the thing works perfectly. It takes 5 minutes and we charge $150. Dish soap people, it's better than WD-40 sometimes. Story 135. Amusement park ride operator here. If your kid is crying and you want us to stop the ride, even if we want to, it's not going to stop immediately. The carousel will spin a few more circles, or the ship will swing a few more times before stopping. The only exceptions is the emergency stop, which will absolutely fudge up the ride for a while if we press it. Hence, we only use it in actual life-threatening situations. The best thing you can do is try to get your kid to calm down as the ride comes to a stop. And no yelling. Stop the ride at us does not make it stop any faster. Story 136. Nobody uses bots to inflate metrics more than the most major players in the entertainment industry. All the numbers are fake, including sales. Story 137. Everything at the Container Store exists and is cheaper at Lowe's. Edit. Even the drop front shoeboxes. Story 138. They lie to their customers about saving their credit card information because we aren't supposed to. We also save their social, addresses, and 5 of their most recent phone numbers and bank account numbers. The life of a student loan servicer. Story 139. I'm a teacher. If you as a parent will read with your child often and early, your child will thrive in school. I am talking daily books read together from newborn to about 3rd grade, every single day. No teacher can replace that. Edit. I thought we would all understand that there are always exceptions such as dyslexia and learning disabilities. So here's another industry secret. Your child will not always fit the school model. Teachers know that, and that's okay. We are all just people after all. Peace. Story 140. RV technician here. Chute is designed to start breaking after around 44 uses. Most RV owners use their trailers on weekends, but not every weekend. So that 44 uses on average stretches between 2 and 3 years. Story 141. Every client thinks architects are unnecessary and they can draw the plans themselves, but they are just too busy. Answer, I cannot wait for the day when I can afford to pay an architect to design a home for me. So many of my family members in the old country just designed their homes however the hell they wanted, and it's obvious that there was no professionals there to say, maybe you shouldn't have a continuously heated pool be the central hub of your home because that'll lead to mold and everything. Or maybe putting marble tiles on your steep driveway is a bad idea because when it rains, your car would literally fudge slide into your front door, WTF. On the flip side, I have this perception that architects are really expensive to hire. Are they? Edit. Thank you so much to everyone that has offered me kind advice. I really appreciate it. Story 142. At Goodwill, we don't clean anything that we sell, and we get some really gross stuff that touches everything else. So next time you buy something from Goodwill, wash it well. Story 143. Weight loss industry. This might be obvious, but most of our business comes from return clients after they've gained their weight back and then some. To be clear, the plan isn't rigged to make you gain it back, but the fact that it happens easily as a result of dieting keeps us in business. Story 144. Audio engineer here. A few seemingly obvious things to point out. 910 times with a studio, you get what you pay for. You have to pay for years of experience, acclaimed expertise, plus hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment and software tools, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of dollars that went into the acoustic engineering of the physical recording space alone. People walk into great studios, balk at $1,000 a song, but don't realize they're getting access to close to $1 million in tools, plus an engineer who's going to make them sound better than life. On the flip side of that coin, beware of eye candy. Don't be fooled by big mixing consoles. Sometimes they're not even used for your music. Hell, sometimes they don't even function. I've seen studios where the sole purpose of a large board is to dupe unsuspecting musicians into parting with their money. Made in larger studios, bands with smaller budgets are often stuck with an intern who may not even be getting paid. If your music is shoot, no amount of production is going to make it a hit. As a small studio owner, I only share work that I think will bring me more business. Wondering why I haven't shared your music? It's because it's garbage. Billie Eilish recorded on budget equipment at home with her brother. Those recordings were then worked on by some of the best engineers in the world to make it sound like it wasn't. Be wary of a record label. They may offer to front the costs of your recording and touring, but you have no creative control over your sound, where you record, your tour schedule, and usually the label will own your music. Oh, and you have to pay all of that money back to the label. Be cautious of studios that claim so-and-so recorded here. There's a studio in Iowa that claims Slipknot recorded here. And while it's true, Slipknot did record in that building, it was a different owner, different engineers, and some different equipment. You're not going to sound like Slipknot by recording there, sorry. The transition from being a creative artist to becoming a commercial product is a path filled with technical and financial traps that many aren't prepared for. It turns out that the music business is often much more about the business and less about the music than most aspiring artists would like to believe when they first start out. Story 145. A lot of successful artists at a certain level of success do nothing more than create a concept and employ several assistants who are either current or graduating art students who actually make the art itself, its reproductions, or both. Edit. I know this is old news in the art industry and academy, but outside of it, I found it very hard to explain my job to people. I do believe that films also romanticize this field and warp what a lot of outsiders think it actually is. Story 146. As a former TSA worker, airport security is a lot of theater. TSA is constantly failing plainclothes inspections. I worked with a guy who got fired because someone showed him an ID with a picture of Mickey Mouse on it, and he let the person through because he wasn't paying attention.